Spawnwave made an Upstein list joke, and it was great. Touche. So I'm telling you right now, with regard to Spawnwave, this video here is all positive. Bravo. This is a long overdue spotlight of praise for John over at Spawnwave. And I would do positive videos more often on this channel, but I gotta pay the bills and earn that opportunity first. But in this video, I'm going to tell you why Spawnwave John's Upstein list joke was epic, and then review why it was warranted and very necessary. And finally, in the finale of this video, I will be delivering Spawnwave John my sincere commendations, which will specify why Spawnwave John's joke about Upstein was a heroic slam for the ages. Slamming the FBI. Rightly. So we're going to jump into it now, but for any Australians in the audience, I'll quickly mention this if you're not familiar. Upstein was a businessman in America who did some bad behavior, and all the files and list of his clients were supposed to get revealed and released to everyone so that the public could find out who was involved in this ring of misbehavior. But then suddenly the government says, no client list, no other info to provide, which is suspicious. So people rightly think that it's being kept hidden because a lot of important, powerful people are implicated, possibly including the president himself. So in comes gaming hero Spawnwave, who happened to do a story about the FBI cracking down on ROM sites. Yep, they're bringing the hammer down hard on ROM sites, but not the Upstein files. The FBI really needs to sort out their priorities. But don't take my word for it. Here's Spawnwave.
Obviously, the big blowback here is this really what the FBI has to be worried about? I mean, look, clearly a big accomplishment here for them. They're patting themselves on the back. Maybe they should make get a piece of paper, start writing down all the accomplishments. I guess you'd call that like a list. Maybe give nicknames to all of them so you have like a list of names that you can then release to the public. You know, just public information with that kind of stuff. Just transparency from the government, which that'll be the day. Probably around the same time Beyond Good and Evil 2 comes out.
Touche, Spawnwave. Well done. And so the first thing to celebrate here is that, and this is a huge relief, Nathaniel Bandy got the joke. He goes, LMAO, the Upstein list call-out. So, bravo, Than. You confirmed your baseline minimum comprehension. Now, Brussels Sprout actually moved a bit forward by saying, we really got an Upstein list reference in Newswave before GTA 6. Indeed, we did. Okay, so why is this notable and especially epic to happen on Spawnwave's channel? Well, this is the last place on YouTube we would expect to get a political bit ripped from the headlines. And I even already pointed this out explicitly in a recent video titled, Alex Yard was sentenced, his atonement, in which I said this. So I want everyone watching this now to understand that you will only ever get uncompromising honesty from me, and if you want something else, just go watch another channel. Go watch Spawnwave and Arlo, where they're going to give you an easy-breezy overview of gaming news and call it a day. I am here deep in the underground connecting dots that other people refuse to because of the blowback they could get. But let me say this, the fact that you listen to Arlo is not a problem at all because I listen to Spawnwave Media like every weekday. It's just that I go to Spawnwave Media not for honest cutting opinionated pieces, but just for reporting the news. Tell me what to expect about the direct. Okay, so in that clip you just heard, Spawnwave is a channel you go to for feel-good dunks on Switch 2 game keycard controversies. Not so much references to governmental cover-ups, but it's not like Spawnwave John's take here was controversial or polarizing. One of the safest takes on planet Earth at the moment is Upstein cover-up bad. It is bad. Now, I don't know if Spawnwave's editor uses Adobe Premiere Pro to edit and export each morning news video, but that certainly is the software that the US government uses. Imagine my amusement when the government released the Upstein prison surveillance video to try and prove what happened, but Wired.com easily figured out that this is not the raw footage from the surveillance cameras. The metadata indicates that this was not just edited, but edited in Adobe Premiere Pro specifically, and it has more than one source file stitched together. They even figured out that the project was saved multiple times. So every time Uncle Sam pressed Control S, Wired saw that. So they deduced that almost 3 minutes of footage was entirely missing due to these editing cuts. Okay, and if that's not bad enough as a sloppy cover-up job, the aspect ratio of the footage abruptly changes mid-video. Like it starts like this and then suddenly gets stretched a bit. So that just screams clicking and dragging a separate clip into the project and somehow not standardizing it. To the extent that this starts to feel like possibly an intentional sabotage, that there was a good egg who was tasked with editing this footage, and that this person intentionally did the editing with a trail of clues for Wired magazine and such to easily find, to make this cover-up more difficult to hide. But if that editor did that, there was no turning back. The government started interrogating staff members with polygraph tests. So that Premiere Pro editor may need to check if Tango Gameworks is hiring, because the US government may no longer require his services going forward. But I gotta quickly address the elephant in the room, which is that Wired's verdict is a solid start and all, but I will only be confident and truly believe that this was definitely manipulated footage only after we get a more thorough review performed by Digital Foundry. Frame rate analysis, the full Monty. That will definitively decide whether this footage was doctored. So now we're going to jump into part 2 of this video to discuss why Spawnwave John's Upstein joke was warranted and justified. It's because we as the public are nothing if we don't stand up and disagree when a big miscarriage of justice is clearly in plain view. If we don't do our part, then we deserve all the dystopian consequences that develop down the line. Now, I in particular have a mandate to lend my perspective because I'm a person who has invoked the United States in previous discussions and even disagreements. I invoked America's free speech in cases of gaming community disputes, when intimidation and bullying is used to suppress a difference of opinion. I have also invoked America's creative principle, whereby, for example, music composers do not generally lift sizable segments of another composer's work to appear in their own. Like 4 measures worth? Not really. At least on a continuum, that kind of thing happens with much smaller frequency and severity than you tend to see it happen outside of our 50 zones, as represented on the 50 stars of the flag. But me invoking these principles does not mean that I think America is some perfect, flawless beacon of perfection. If the mission statement on the books is honorable, it all means nothing if the people don't live up to those standards, or even abuse the powers in place to shield powerful public figures from accountability and transparency. And of course, a big part of my channel here is debunking fallacies and deconstructing BS language that you could describe as doublespeak. Doublespeak is a way of lying, or at least twisting the truth out of convenience in order to hide the facts. When someone does doublespeak, they say something that may possibly be true in some superficial sense, but it obscures the underlying facts of the matter. We all remember when the USA president said, "I did not have sexual relations with that woman," which seems like a flat-out denial, doesn't it? Well, it turns out when he said that, he specifically meant that he did not go all the way to home base. He stopped at third base. So he felt he didn't need to declare that at customs. Because she did it to Bill. Bill was just a passive recipient. Bill never had relations with her organs. Got it. So more recently, the government had initially indicated that the list of Upstein's clients would be released to the public, but then they later backed out of it with doublespeak. They turned around and said, there is no Upstein client list. And that's what Spawnwave was poking fun at. So Pam Bondage has potentially given us some doublespeak because she's saying, technically in all the files, there's no blatant itemized list of clients. But in reality, you could go through all the evidence and identify who was involved in the clientele. But Pam Bondage is stopping there to say that there's no clear-cut canonical list. Have a good evening. Now, if it's any consolation, if they did release the client list tomorrow, it might be a little bit of an anticlimax, because many of the names that would appear on that client list have already been floated in the media as such. And this is coming from someone who knows what they're talking about, Alan Dershowitz. But Pam Bondage serves up this sloppy cover-up and condescension, and it just adds insult to injury. Right? If Upstein was in fact working as an asset of a U.S. intelligence agency, Pam Bondage could at least feed the public a narrative where the government felt like they were getting their money's worth with Upstein. Like Pam could say, hey, remember when we caught Osama Recycle Bin in 2011? Well, you can thank Upstein about that. He came in clutch on that one, actually, because he used his operation to blackmail the right person who surrendered the info about Osama Recycle Bin's location. So at that point, we just had to catch a quick Uber to Abbottabad to get him. That's what this image of Obama is, as iterated in the thumbnail of this video. We have the memes. So now we've arrived at the finale of this video, where I will now be delivering Spawnwave my sincere commendations, which will specify why Spawnwave's simple gesture of integrity goes a long way and makes a big difference. But before we launch into this finale, this has been Alex Yard here at 91.6 WAYZ, the Alex Yard Zone, terrestrial internet radio. If you see us running, try to keep up. Spawnwave John, thank you for exercising your capacity with the power of journalism to affect societal causes and change. You deserve all 700,000 subs that you have, so keep speaking up to ensure honest transparency about the ongoing controversies with Switch 2 game key cards. I am going to nominate Spawnwave for the Mark Twain Prize. He is a patient, magnanimous dude, and a beacon of physical fitness and responsible nutrition. He even influenced me, because sometimes I use his definition of the word controversy, which means that at least one person pushed back or disagreed. Look, all around, he's just a stand-up guy. Look how patient and chill Spawnwave can be when faced with adversity and dead air spinning of wheels.
How many copies of Street Fighter you got, Wood?
Still only 3, unfortunately. I'm eyeing down a 4th. I just got to go pick it up.
I didn't see the lore around that. Why did you end up with so many?
Do you really care? Does anybody really care?
I'm interested.
Why I have 3? It's so boring, and it takes a minute to explain.
That's fine.
Is it?
Okay, here we go. You guys asked for it. So you know how they did the pre-orders online that night that everyone was trying to get the Switch pre-order?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I panicked, not knowing what kind of games I would get. Is that my phone?
Someone has an emergency.
That's my phone. Hold on.
Emergency warning. The nukes are incoming.
Management agency?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's experiencing a statewide intermittent 911 outage. Oh. So you can't call 911? All right. Well, no one.
Oh, wow.
No one do anything to me. I've never seen that.
Anything can happen now.
We had a tornado warning the other day. We had to hide in the basement. All right. Sorry. So I panic ordered a bunch of games not knowing what I would get.
Yeah, I bet you did. Good night, everybody.